Hello everyone, my name is Miro and I'm going to present you 7 mobile web applications which are required for my assessment. Let's start with task 1, which was relatively easy. What you need to do is once you click on image, the text is supposed to be changed. But because it was too easy, I wanted to challenge myself, and instead of text, I'm actually having images here. And that means I needed to use multiple layouts. Okay, let me show you the backend. What we have is array where we're gonna store these layouts and another one where we're gonna store these custom buttons. Then what we need is inflator in order to access these custom layouts. And here I'm storing these layouts into the array. I'm using this option because instead of using a lot of if-else statements, I rather go just for a for loop. And in the for loop is what I'm actually doing, is basically telling that each image, once it's being clicked, it will load its certain corresponding layout. If I click image 1, it's going to load layout 1, image 2, layout 2. And this is done in this method here. And because I had some problem, and once I click on image 1, then image 2, they were overlapping, I found out that I needed a container, which is a frame layout, where I'm going to load them and unload them. This is what is happening in this method. And here I'm programming the button for each layout, which says if I'm in layout 1, open button 1. And here I'm setting clickener for a certain button, which has a new method which is called reset to default. This method, what it does, is basically clears all the layouts and returns the first text which is here. And that's it. App 2 is a travel destination app which has 3 radio buttons and 1 spinner, and if I click on the radio buttons they will affect the spinners option, and once I click on submit I'm gonna get different information for each of them. Okay, let me show you the backend. The backend has array list that is necessary for the spinner array, and I'm using function called hashmap. Hashmap, what it does is basically into array list matches to string types. And what I'm doing here is I'm having custom string arrays and strings which are written here, and I'm accessing the string arrays from here, and I'm telling to this hash map, hey, if the first string array is in index 0, give me string that string, or if it's in 0 index 2, give me that string. Okay, once this is explained, what I'm doing is I'm setting my spinner and I'm adding the custom adapter over here. Then I'm programming the radio buttons, which are telling if I'm clicking on the boats, give me the boats destinations, or train destinations if I'm clicking on train. Then I'm always updating the type adapter. Here I'm calling this function that is loading these strings, because when I press submit, and if I don't call this function, it wouldn't know what to do and the program will start crashing. And here I'm basically telling that if I'm clicking on something on the spinner, give it string, and I'm storing that string into destination. And here I have small if else statement. If I select something, display it. If I don't, show me this message. And obviously here I have button clean. I had few small problems, and some of them was this no selection was not appearing, it was completely blank until I pressed something on the radio button. Then I've checked how can I sort it out, and I realized that I just need to add it here and update the adapter. However, once I've that done, and once I press clean, it was also keep disappearing. Then I realized I need to do pretty much the same into the clean button as well. And overall, that's it. In task 3, we had to make a pizza ordering app, and it has few checkboxes. Once you click on them, images will appear, and of course it's gonna add their ingredients amount to the total. Once you press on order pizza, it will display you this total. Once you clear, it will clear the entire screen. In the backend, we're having a sum of 10 because the base of the pizza alone costs £10. Obviously we have the images and the checkboxes. Also I've implemented method called setup checkbox, which takes 3 arguments, one of checkbox type, one of image type, and one of price type. And what it does is, if this checkbox is checked, make this image appear and also add this amount of whatever it is to the sum, which is 10. And when this checkbox is unclicked, do the opposite. Just remove the image and remove the price from the total. And in the end, show that total. Then I have the submit button, which basically takes that sum and displays it in this fancy message. Then we have the button clean, which implements the method clear selection, which is here, and sets everything back to default. And also we have the message which is showing you thank you. Up 4, it's an animal catalog, and it was quite challenging. The things I did not find challenging was the horizontal view that was required to implement, and once you click on image, it should update the description, image, and title accordingly. I found this relatively easy, but the programming button next and previous, I found it slightly difficult. In the back, I'm having current index, which is 0, which I'm going to use for the iterations. Then I'm having 3 arrays, one for the titles, one for the animal description, story, and strengths, and one for the image views. Once I call the image views in this array here, I'm calling method called update animal display. And what it does is basically setting the title, the animal description to the current index, and through 4 iterations, I get the current index of the image as well. And what I'm doing here is programming the small images which are on top of the scroll view. So I'm having small method called setAnimal, and this is basically allowing me to change the current index to whatever I like. So if I'm in index 0, which is capybara, and I want to go straight away to chinchilla, I just change it to 2. And also I'm updating accordingly the title, description, and image. So the hard part is the buttons itself. So what I'm having here is, imagine I'm on index 3, which is the last picture I have, plus 1, it will become index 4, and my array doesn't have such index, so it's going to be out of bounds. So I'm modeling the animal image length, which is again 4, and it will give me reminder 0, which will give me index 0, so it's going to get me back to the beginning. And accordingly, it's going to use the method to update animal display. On the previous button, of course, if I'm moving backwards, I need to go 1 index backwards. But if I'm at the first index, which is 0, minus 1 also will go out of the bounds. That's why we are adding the image length, which is 4. So minus 1 plus 4, it will go to index 3. This is how this works. App 5, it's a login and register app, and this was one of the hardest that I had to implement. So what I'm gonna do is gonna give you a small showcase. I'm gonna try to make to log in with an account which does not exist. So let's try to register. We have several precaution measures. So if I try to register, it will ask me to fill full name. So let's try with Bruce Wayne. Then I'm just gonna choose some gender, some age. Then if I try to register, it will ask me to fill a username. So let's do Batman. Then if I try to register, it will ask me to fill a password. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and let's try to mistakenly do 5. It will give me another message that the password are not matching. So if I correct this and try to register, finally I'm registered. And if I try to log in, of course I'm gonna try with wrong password just to check. It does not let me in. If I type it correctly, I'll be able to log in. And this is how the login screen looks like, the logout screen looks like. Okay, so if I go to database, now I'm gonna have new data called Batman. And if I try to create the same name, it should not be able to. So let's try to create this time Jack Sparrow. Make him female, and I'm gonna use the same year. I'm gonna try to type Batman again, and let's try any password. And if I try to register, it's letting me know that this name is existing, so I cannot use it anymore. Okay, so let's turn this off and let me show you the code. But before I do that, you need, if you're accessing Firebase or any online database, you need to add these two dependencies in your manifest where the project is, because without them you won't be able to access internet. So the whole code you're going to write down is going to be pointless. You won't be able to access them. So first things first, I'm having a helper class. This class is helping me to create all the it contains all the data for full name, username, password, gender, and year, everything that I need to register a new user. Then I'm going to the login activity, that's main activity, and in the main code I have these three main final strings which I'm going to use to store the data into the database and get it after into my logged in activity. Okay, so what I have here is I'm creating a register button, and that button basically is telling me, okay, go to the register activity. But before I go there, I have the login button, which has these two small methods, which are validate username and validate password. So what it's going to check is if they are empty, it's gonna throw me error that username password can't be empty. Else it's gonna check user. That's another method which is here, and it's going to check any of the input which is given. It will check if there is input, but if the input is also equaling the password, then login is successful. If it's not, it's just gonna give me that the password is wrong. Else it's just gonna tell me that the account is not existing. So let's get to the register activity. In this activity here, I'm having a lot of things. I'm having a Firebase and the database references, which I'm going to need because whatever I write down, it needs to be sent to the Firebase. So I have them here, and they're telling to get instance and get reference. So that means it's gonna be saved into users. And here I have a array adapter for the spinner, and I have a for loop which allows me to choose the year between 1920 and 2020. Here what I have is the register button, and it has a lot of functionality. What it does is gonna get all the text and passwords, including the gender and the year, and it's just gonna register, of course, if the conditions are met. So what I have here is if-else statements for the gender, and same goes for the text. If the text is empty, as I show, just fill username, name, password, checks here if the password are equal or not. If they're not, just throw error. Then once this is done, here what I have, it's another thing that checks if the account already exists into the database. If it does, throw this error. If it doesn't, register successfully. And here is using the helper class blueprint, where stores all the data and moves it into the Firebase. And if I'm trying to register while I'm disconnected, it will give me this error message. Same go here. I have button back, which just moves backwards to the login screen, and button clear, which cleans everything. In the logged in activity, what was a bit more difficult was this piece of code here. Yes, it's small, but I wasn't sure how to get all the data which I just create from the database to be showing into the logged in activity, which is the login screen. So I used some help. And on top of that, I had some small problems, because when I select, for instance, age 1992 into the spinner, it was telling me that I'm 1992 years old. So I had to implement this small formula, which was getting the calendar, and it was getting the current date, minusing it from the year I chose from the spinner. This sorted the problem out. And I have the logout, which is just having the small text and does exactly the same as the button back. I want to give great credit and big thanks to this channel, which is called Android Knowledge. They helped me a lot with the implementation of the Firebase, and this channel, which is Coding in Flow, which helped me to fetch the data from the Firebase into the login activity. So if you don't mind, if you like these guys, just subscribe. They're really good. Thank you. Up 6, and it's basically creation of a contacts model. So the hard part is basically this small pop-up window which is allowing you to access the contacts. This part is not easy either. This is actually recycle view, which means if I go up, the data is being claimed by the memory and it's loaded back from the bottom. Also, there is a search filter. Once you try to type, let's say John, as you can see, it's erasing the data, reducing the contacts. If you click on any of their images, it's allowing you to dial them or do any other interactions. I'm not gonna dial them now, but the thing is, I wanted to start with activity main 2 for the pop-up window, because at the beginning it was starting with the recycle view on the background and it was a bit odd to look, so I had to enforce to start with activity main 2, which is just blank screen. Okay, having said that, I also needed a contacts model that's a class which is gonna have the fingerprints of name, number, email, and image, and I'm going to call it in my recycler view adapter here as a array list called contacts. Also, I'm gonna make another one which is going to filter these contacts. Then here I have the constructor, and obviously I have a method called filter, and that filter contact method does, if I did not type anything into the contacts bar, show me all the contacts. Else, do for loop and check every letter. If has any one matching, just show me these contacts. And it has to update the adapter every single time. This code here basically uses the layout for the recycler view. In this code, we are actually giving that information to that adapter. This one also gives it, but that's the image, and once you click on it, it's supposed to send you somewhere. In that case, in our action view, which is allowing us to dial the contacts. And here, this is just asking for the size of the contacts, so we're giving the filter contact size. In this one, we are just implementing the same as the main activity, declaring the variables and utilizing them. So let's go to main activity, and what we have here is array for the images here, as you can see, the recycle view adapter itself, and we have also a new contact list of the contacts model here. So we are basically utilizing setup contacts method on the top, and what this method does is basically calling all these which are in my custom strings, the names, the numbers, and the emails, into variables, and then with a for loop it's calling the images as well. So it has the data prepared for the recycle view adapter. Therefore we just implement the recycle view and we assign adapter to it here. Then we have the edit text search, which is that search filter, and we are just gonna call that function, which is the filter one, into the recycle view adapter. We're gonna call it here, and this is how it works. And in main activity 2, all this code here is just for this small pop-up window, which is letting you to go basically to the contacts. It's literally asking for permission to read the contacts, and if you do, it's gonna grant you the permission. And else, if you don't allow, just close the activity and that's it. Also, you have the option to send you to the settings where the permissions are, so you can enable the permission as well. So this is what it is. It was very hard, and because I wasn't actually familiarized with the dialog boxes, how to utilize them, that makes the whole thing really hard. final app, and it's a game renting store. So what you can do is you just can rent the game by pressing on the game, then choose a date, it will be displayed. You can choose another game if you like, let's say God of War, choose another date, it will be displayed again, and then you just can go to checkout, it will display you all the dates and everything. Whoa, what a similarity. Then if you go back, it will store the data and it will keep them reserved, unless if you don't want to cancel them. It looks quite simple visually, but I found it very challenging because all this thing is actually recycler view and all this data is actually stored into a JSON script. I even didn't know what was JSON before I started this project, so Mr. Cain provided us with small sample. Obviously I edited everything in it, and he provided with link where we can convert this into a JSON script, and we just can use the database from there straight away. Okay, but doing that I was wondering, what am I doing, what is JSON, and how can I use it in Recycler View? Therefore I researched a bit into YouTube, and I found Master Coding, who was having similar app to my booking game app store. So I followed his code and I was able successfully to load the JSON script into the Recycler View. So many thanks to him. Please subscribe. Let's get back to the program. And because it's an online database, you need to add the permissions into the Android manifest. As a Recycler View, always you'll need a class model. Then you will need to create in the Recycler View array list that contains this class model over here. And also we have activity launcher, which I'm gonna explain a bit later. So what is the new thing here is this if else statement for the button. So once it's clicked, it will change to orange and it will change the text to game reserve. And these holders here are slightly different because it fetched the data from the JSON script, which is online. In the button itself is checking if the current game is not rented, then open that calendar, choose the dates, and this small function here is not allowing me to choose a previous date than the current date, so I cannot choose 5th if today is 6th of December. And what I have here is a method which is called reserve games, which is adding the game. And that method reserve games is this one. Basically it's gonna open that dialog box which you see in the screen with game reservations, reserved from that date to that date, blah blah blah. And then inside here you also have in that dialog box message two options, to go to the checkout or just to stay on the same page. So if you want to go to the checkout, it's just gonna transition it to the new window, and as you can see activity launcher is starting here. And if you don't want to, just is gonna close that dialog. However, it still will change the button from blue to orange and it will change the text to game reserve. Also, if you click on the button again, the new dialog box will show up and it will tell you whether you want to cancel the game or not. The rest is the same as the previous methods except this small method. So as you can see, I reserved two games, and at the beginning I had problem. When I reserve a game, it was showing me one game. When I reserve a second game, it was showing me only the second game. This small method actually updates the list and it's showing you both games in the list altogether. Let's go to the main activity, and here in the main activity there's a lot to cover. Here is the JSON script URL, and here is that activity launcher, which is able to basically keep your information. It remembers it once you transition between. For instance, if I go to activity 2, which is my bookings, and go back, this will be able to show me that the games are still reserved. I had a very big problem with that because when I was pressing back, always was canceling my reservation for some reason. And here we have executor service executor, which basically it's allowing us to start the access for the JSON script. It's telling if the JSON script is not empty displayed. And here is basically what it actually it is. It connects to the URL which we give on the top and checks if everything is correct in the link. If it is, execute the link. If it's not, just disconnect. And parse and display data. This method basically uses JSON object array, where it basically gets everything with a for loop. It gets all the data from that JSON script. So everything that you see here is the same as in the JSON script. All these are matching. And once this is done, it's adding them in the game list, and the game list is of the same class as my game class model. So once this is stored, it's updating the recycler view method. That updated recycle view method is checking if I have already existing recycle view adapter. If I do, just use it and do the method. If I don't, create a new from scratch and use the method. In mine activity 2, what I have is basically this if statement and all this script, which is allowing me to get the data from that dialog box which I created and put it into the main screen. And I have that button, which is the back button, and what it does here is basically once you click back, it saves the data and the games are still reserved. Display games reserved is basically displaying the games the same way as in the dialog box. What I can say, this challenge was really hard, but I really enjoy it. Thank you for watching.